I still remember the smell of old wood and rose candles filling the small waiting room behind the chapel in Willowbrook, Vermont, where my wedding was supposed to start in just a few minutes. The walls were painted a warm cream color, and the window to my left looked out over a quiet street lined with bare maple trees. I had always pictured myself feeling calm on my wedding day, maybe smiling at my reflection and feeling like everything had finally come together. Instead, my hands were trembling as I tried to steady my breath. My dress fit perfectly, my hair was pinned in a soft twist, and the music crew was already warming up with gentle guitar chords that drifted through the door. I should have felt joy. But joy requires space, and my chest felt tight, like someone was slowly pressing their hand against my heart. My phone buzzed against the wooden table beside me. I almost ignored it. Everyone important was already supposed to be on their way inside. But habit won. I reached for it, expecting a simple "we're here," or maybe a last-minute question from a cousin. Instead, I saw my sister's name, Lauren. Her message was short. "We're not coming. Any of us." At first, I thought maybe she meant they were running late or stuck in traffic. My brain tried to soften the blow before it fully landed. I typed back quickly. "What are you talking about? Where are you?" I waited. The typing bubbles never appeared. My throat felt dry, and suddenly the room didn't feel warm anymore. I blinked at the screen, trying to understand how the people who raised me could simply decide not to show up on the most important day of my life. Then an email notification popped up. It was from my mother, Diane. She rarely emailed me unless it was something dramatic or something she thought would sting more if written instead of spoken. The subject line was, "You'll be fine on your own." I opened it with a bad feeling already growing inside me. "Since you made your choice, you can deal with the results. You never listen, and we're tired of trying to guide you. You'll be fine on your own." That was it. No warmth, no hint of love, not even a signature. Just a cold statement that landed heavier than I want to admit. I stared at it until the words blurred. I had spent months begging them to give my fiancé, Michael, a chance. He wasn't loud or flashy, and maybe that bothered them. He grew up in Brambleton, Virginia, worked as a mechanical engineer, and spoke with a quiet confidence my family never trusted. They always preferred louder people, people whose emotions were thrown like darts, not spoken gently. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Lauren. "We all decided. Don't expect us there. Good luck," or whatever. I felt something snap, not loudly, but sharply, like a thin wire breaking under too much tension. I thought of all the times I had helped them, the money I had wired over the years, $200 for a bill, $600 for a repair, $1,000 when my mother called crying about a debt she pretended she didn't see coming. I remembered driving overnight to Silverford, Ohio just to help my sister move, even though she barely said thank you. I remembered the way they acted as if my success wasn't earned but owed to them. My fingers flew over the screen before I could even think. You know what? Stay on your own too. And don't expect another dollar from me ever again.
Not one.
You made your choice today.
So did I.
I sent it. My hands were still shaking, but the reason had changed. The shaking wasn't from fear now. It was anger. And beneath the anger was something cleaner, relief, maybe, or the first breath after holding it too long. A new message appeared, not words, just a laughing emoji. The kind someone sends when they think they've won. I put the phone face down on the table, but the sound of my heartbeat was still too loud. I wanted to scream or cry or run out of the room and disappear into the cold air outside. But I stayed because running would make their decision bigger than my own happiness. A soft knock broke the silence. "Can I come in for a second?" Michael's voice came from the doorway. "You're not supposed to see me yet," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I know," he said, stepping inside anyway. But I had a feeling something was wrong. His tie was slightly crooked, and his dark hair was falling over his forehead in that way I always teased him about. His eyes were calm, steady, nothing like the storm inside me. "They're not coming," I said. "Not one of them." He closed the door gently and walked across the room until he stood right in front of me. "Your mom?" he asked quietly. "All of them," I said. "My mom?"
"Lauren."
my uncle, even my cousin Anna, who promised she'd help me fix my veil this morning. They're all gone. For a moment, he said nothing. He didn't rush to hug me or give me advice. He just stood there, letting the truth settle in the space between us. "Do you still want to get married today?" he asked. "Yes," I said immediately. "I don't even have to think about it." He nodded, and a soft smile appeared on his face. "Then we'll walk out there and get married with the people who did show up. And that will be enough for me. It always has been." I felt my shoulders drop as if I'd been holding them up for years. I took a deep breath, and for the first time since the messages arrived, I didn't feel alone. "Okay," I whispered. "Let's do it." He kissed my forehead gently, then left the room so the ceremony could begin. I turned off my phone completely, shutting out the noise, the guilt, the expectations that had followed me my entire life. And when I walked down that aisle, without a single blood relative watching, I expected to feel empty. But I didn't. Instead, I felt something rising inside me, something strong and steady. Maybe it was courage. Maybe it was freedom. When Michael placed the ring on my finger, and I said, "I do," I knew the truth. My life had just split into 2 chapters, before the wedding and after. And I wasn't going back. The month after my wedding felt like walking through a familiar neighborhood after all the trees had been cut down. Everything looked the same, but the feeling was gone. I kept waiting for my phone to light up with some grand apology from my family, or at least a message saying they were confused or emotional and didn't mean what they did. But the screen stayed dark. The silence became its own kind of message, loud, heavy, and impossible to ignore. Michael and I moved into a small stone house on Brookside Avenue in Larkwell, Minnesota, the kind of quiet American suburb where the streets curve gently between tall pine trees and the neighbors wave even if they've never met you. The house wasn't big. It had 2 bedrooms, a patchy yard, and a slanted porch roof that groaned when the wind pushed against it. But when we first toured it, I felt something in my chest loosen, as if the walls were whispering, "You can rest here." We bought it for $198,000, which felt unreal to both of us. It was the largest purchase I had ever made, and I didn't tell anyone in my family about it, not even when we closed. Michael's job as a design assistant at a local architecture firm meant he woke up early every day, leaving the house in neat black slacks and a travel mug full of coffee. I worked remotely as a team coordinator for a medical software company based in Portland, Maine, which meant I spent my mornings on video calls and my afternoons sending emails from the small desk we had pushed under the bedroom window. In some ways, I liked the quiet. It felt safe, predictable. But there were moments when I wished I had someone to call and say, "We bought new curtains today," or "I finally figured out how to fix the sink." But that list of people used to be my family, and they were gone now, by choice. One night, after a long workday, Michael and I ate dinner on the living room floor because our dining table was still on backorder. We ate out of mismatched bowls, sitting on a blanket because we hadn't bought a rug yet. The room felt half empty, but full of possibility in a strange way. "You're far away again," Michael said as he set down his fork. "Where did you go this time?" I didn't answer right away. I looked at the peeling paint on the window frame and imagined my childhood living room in Northfield Springs, Delaware, where everything had been slightly broken in a way we all pretended not to notice, like the couch leg that wobbled, or the lamp with the cracked base. "I went back home," I finally said. "Back to my mother sitting on the couch with her feet up and the TV volume too high. Back to my sister slamming her bedroom door because she didn't want to talk about anything real. Back to me checking my wallet to see if I could afford gas to go back to school on Monday." He nodded, chewing slowly, giving me space to continue. "I used to think that if I worked hard enough," I said, "if I saved enough, if I earned enough, everything would finally make sense for them. I thought money would fix things, that it would fix them, and maybe fix our relationship too." "And now," he asked gently. "And now I think money wasn't the solution," I said. "It was the rope tying me to people who only saw me as their way out. I thought love was about helping no matter what. But I was wrong. Or maybe I was just young." Michael reached over and took my hand. "You weren't wrong," he said. "You were hopeful. But you're also allowed to stop giving when giving only hurts you." I let out a breath.
I keep telling myself that.
But part of me still feels guilty for cutting them off. That's the part, he said, that they trained. His words landed quietly but deeply. That night, after he fell asleep, I opened my laptop and looked through the last 5 years of bank transfers. There were payments for my mother's overdue bills, for my sister's surprise car issues, for emergencies that never seemed to end. Seeing the total, over $32,000, made my chest tighten. I couldn't help thinking of what that money could have been. A better car, a stronger savings account, a vacation, a wedding dress I hadn't had to buy on sale. But the truth was even harder. I had spent that money trying to buy love. Not directly, not intentionally, but in small ways that added up. I had hoped each payment would be the one that turned everything around. I closed the laptop and lay on my back in the dark, listening to the soft hum of the refrigerator downstairs. I promised myself that if my family could walk away from me so easily, then I could walk away from the idea that I owed them anything more. In the days that followed, I tried to focus on building a life, not repairing one. I chose a pale blue paint for the front door because it reminded me of calm mornings. I bought a few cheap rose bushes from a local garden center and planted them along the fence, imagining how they might look in a few years when they grew thick and full. I wrote a list in my journal labeled dreams and added small and big things. Take a pottery class, save $6,000, visit Edinburgh one day. Learn to bake sourdough. Buy a red coat like the ones women wear in European movies. The list wasn't about running away. It was about building a life that felt fully mine. In the quiet nights after dinner, Michael showed me small things about himself I hadn't noticed before. He hummed softly when he concentrated on fixing something. He folded dish towels in perfect thirds. He liked to keep an envelope in the kitchen drawer with $40 tucked inside, just in case, because his grandmother had once told him, "Never live without your exit money."
I smiled at that.
Not because I wanted an exit, but because I loved the way his mind worked. But the biggest difference in my life came from something harder to see. It was the hollow space where the instinct to call my family used to be. When something good happened, I didn't reach for the phone. When something stressful happened, I didn't feel the old panic rising. There was no one to impress, no one to fix, no one to save. The quiet wasn't always peaceful, but it was honest. And honesty, it turned out, was the first step toward healing. It happened on a Wednesday afternoon, right when I was finishing a long virtual meeting with a client in Charleston, South Carolina. Outside my office window, the snow in Larkwell, Minnesota had begun to melt, leaving streaks of gray slush trailing along the street. I had been reviewing a project timeline with a woman named Marjorie, who kept adjusting her glasses and talking about budget cuts for the next quarter. My headset felt heavy on my ears, and my eyes were tired from staring at spreadsheets for hours. But I stayed focused, nodding and taking notes, doing what I always did, showing up perfectly even when I didn't feel perfect at all. That was when my phone started buzzing on the desk beside me. At first, I ignored it. Work came first, and I had spent years building a reputation for reliability. If I was anything, I was the woman who never let a call interrupt her job. But then the buzzing continued. And continued. It pulsed against the wooden surface like a heartbeat that didn't belong to me, steady and insistent. I tried to keep my expression smooth for the camera, tried not to glance down, but my nerves tightened with every vibration. When the meeting finally ended, I closed my laptop halfway and reached for my phone. What I saw on the lock screen almost made me drop it. 241 missed calls. For a moment, my brain refused to understand the number. I blinked, thinking the screen was glitching. But when I opened the phone fully, the missed call list stretched endlessly downward, filled with names I knew too well. Mom, Lauren, my cousin Harper, and even my Uncle Ray, who lived in Benton Crest, Kentucky, and never called anyone unless someone had died or someone needed bail. My stomach twisted. My first thought was the worst. Someone must be hurt. My second thought was the truth I didn't want. They only call this much when they want something from me. Both thoughts made me feel lightheaded. I set the phone down on the desk, face down, as if simply turning it over could make the problems stay underneath it. My legs felt unsteady as I pushed my chair back and walked toward the kitchen. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that used to comfort me, but now felt too sharp. I poured a glass of water, but didn't drink it, just held it between my palms, feeling the cold press into my skin. The front door opened, and I heard Michael's familiar footsteps. "Hey," he called gently as he walked into the kitchen. "You look like something scared you." "Something did," I said, my voice sounding flat even to myself. "My phone." He leaned against the counter beside me, still wearing his coat, his cheeks pink from the cold. "Let me guess," he said softly. "Your family?" 241 missed calls, I said. "In one day." He let out a slow breath. "Wow. That's not even counting the texts," I added.
I didn't open them yet.
"I can't." "Do you think something happened?" he asked. "That's the thing," I said. "Part of me thinks maybe there's an emergency. Something real. But the other part, the bigger part, thinks they're panicking about money again. And I told them not to ask me for money anymore. I told them." Michael took off his coat and folded it over the back of a chair. "You don't have to decide anything right now," he said gently. "You can breathe first." I closed my eyes. "I don't trust myself with them, Michael. They know exactly how to make me feel guilty. They know if they push long enough, I'll break. I always have." He paused, choosing his words. "What if just this once," he said, "you act like someone who doesn't break, just to see how it feels?" It was such a simple suggestion, and yet it felt like a door cracking open inside me. I went back to the office and sat down at my desk. The phone lay there, silent for the moment, as if it were holding its breath too. I picked it up and opened the voicemail list. There were more than 20 messages waiting. My thumb hovered, then tapped the first one. Mom's voice burst through the speaker immediately, harsh and sharp enough to make my shoulders tense. "Why aren't you answering the phone? This is serious. Call me back right now." I listened to the next one. "This isn't funny, Amanda. We know you see the calls. Answer us." Then one from Lauren, sounding annoyed, not panicked. "Stop ignoring everyone. You always do this dramatic silent treatment thing. Just pick up. This is urgent." I felt a familiar pressure build behind my eyes. The kind of pressure that used to make me cave. But then came the fourth message, and everything shifted. Mom again, her voice shaking this time. "We're going to lose the house," she said. "The bank wants $8,400 by Friday, or they start the foreclosure process. You know you can help. Please, just call me back." I stopped the message and let the phone rest in my lap. For a moment, the old instinct roared back. Fix it. Help them. Move money around. Make it go away. I imagined myself transferring the money, imagining how quickly they would take the help without a thank you, imagining how the cycle would start again. But then another thought came, calm and sharp. They didn't come to your wedding. They didn't come for my joy, but here they were, coming for my fear. I walked back into the kitchen, where Michael was pouring tea. "They're going to lose the house," I said. He looked at me steadily. "I'm sorry," he said. "That's a hard thing." "I could help," I said. "We have the savings. We'd still have enough left to be okay." "Yes," he said. "We could." I took a breath. "Do you think I should?" He didn't rush to answer. He never tried to control these decisions. He knew how fragile the balance was. Finally, he said, "I think you should do whatever will make you respect yourself tomorrow. And the tomorrow after that." I looked down at the phone in my hand. The little red numbers on the voicemail icon looked like warning lights. For a moment, I hovered over the call button. Then I turned the phone off completely, placed it inside the drawer of the hallway table, and closed it. "I'm not calling today," I said. "Maybe not tomorrow. Maybe not ever." I told them not to expect another dollar from me. They made their choice on my wedding day. They don't get to choose only when they're scared. Michael looked at me with something like pride, mixed with sadness. "I'm with you," he said. That night, as we lay in bed, the phone buzzed quietly from inside the drawer. The vibrations were faint but steady, like distant thunder. Each buzz made the old version of me flinch somewhere deep inside. But I didn't move. I didn't reach for it. I stared at the ceiling until the shadows shifted, and for the first time in my life, I let their crisis stay with them. It wasn't my responsibility anymore. It never should have been. The calls slowed after the third day, like a storm that had exhausted itself. At first, the silence felt unnatural, like the pause between two lightning strikes. I caught myself checking the drawer where my phone lay powered off, as if it were some sleeping creature that might wake and start screaming again. By the end of the week, the house felt strangely still, wrapped in its own kind of peace. A real peace, though at times it felt fragile, as if one unexpected noise could break it in half. I eventually turned my phone back on. The screen lit up with more alerts than I could count, but I didn't open most of them. I listened to only a few of the new voicemails. Some were desperate. Some were angry. One, from my mother, was delivered in a trembling whisper that sounded almost rehearsed. "After everything I did for you," she said, as if feeding and raising me had been a business transaction with overdue payments. I let the message play until the end, then deleted it without saving. For once, my fingers didn't shake afterward. Instead of drowning in their noise, I threw myself into small, simple routines. I worked. I folded laundry. I walked around Larkwell bundled tightly against the late winter chill. I learned the names of the people on our street, not because I needed them, but because I finally had room in my mind to notice the world around me. There was Mrs. Hollis in the yellow house with the ivy. She owned 2 elderly dachshunds that waddled across her snowy yard like stubborn kings. Across the street lived Evan and Rhea, a young couple with a daughter who insisted on showing me her chalk drawings whenever I walked by. I started buying bread from Elena's Corner Bakery, where the owner, a cheerful woman with silver hair, always tucked an extra roll into my bag for good luck. Life didn't magically become whole, but it became fuller in small ways that surprised me. One Saturday, Michael suggested we drive to Ridgewater, Michigan, the nearest city with a lakefront that wasn't frozen solid anymore. The sun was bright, but the wind was sharp, and we held hands as we walked along the pier. We talked about the future the way people do when they're finally free to imagine one. We talked about saving $18,000 over the next 2 years and spending a few weeks wandering the streets of Barcelona or Dublin, sipping coffee in little cafes and pretending we belonged there. For the first time in my life, dreaming didn't feel irresponsible or selfish. It felt like stretching a muscle I had forgotten I had. Walking beside the water, I realized something startling. When I thought about my future now, my family didn't sit at the center of it. Their emergencies were no longer the map I navigated by. My life, my choices, my money, they were finally mine. That realization didn't bring joy right away, but it brought relief. A slow, warm relief that settled in my chest like a breath I'd been holding for years. A month after the flood of calls, a text arrived from a number I didn't recognize. My first instinct was to ignore it, but curiosity tugged at me, and I opened it. "Hi, this is your Aunt Catherine. I found your number through Lauren. I know things are tense. Your mother didn't handle the wedding well. The house is gone. The bank seized it last week. They're staying with a friend in Old Haven, New Jersey now. I'm not asking for anything, just thought you should know they're safe." I sat at the edge of the bed for a long time, staring at the message. Safe.
Alive.
Not homeless in the way my mother might have dramatized. Not stranded. Just living with someone else, the same way they had leaned on me for so long. The worst hadn't happened. Not to them, anyway. My world, though, my understanding of what family could be had shifted completely. That night, after dinner, I sat on the front steps of our house. The evening sky over Brookside Avenue was a deep violet, streaked with silver clouds. The air smelled faintly of pine and melting snow. The street was quiet except for the distant rumble of a passing truck and the faint laughter of children playing somewhere down the block. I sat there until the cold crept into my hands, thinking about everything and nothing at once. Michael came out and sat beside me. He didn't speak right away. He just wrapped his arm around my shoulders and leaned lightly against me. "Do you feel guilty?" he asked finally, his voice soft. "Yes," I admitted. "And also no. It's like there are 2 voices fighting in my head." "What are they saying?" "One says I abandoned my family when they needed me most. That I should have helped, even if they didn't show up for me. The other voice, says they walked away first. That I'm not their insurance policy. That it isn't my job to save them every time they make the same mistake. Which one feels true? He asked gently.
They both do, I said.
And that's the hardest part. He kissed the top of my head. You know, he said, people talk about the price of things, houses, cars, trips, but they never talk about the price of having peace. It's not free. It always costs something. What do you think peace costs? I asked. In your case, he said, letting go of a family who didn't know how to love you the right way. I looked at our house then, the chipped paint on the porch railing, the tiny porch light we planned to replace, the basil plant we hadn't expected to survive the winter, but somehow did. The house wasn't much, but it was ours. Built from our income, our work, not my guilt, not my family's demands. I used to think love meant giving until it hurt, I said quietly. That if I loved people enough, I could fix them. Now I'm starting to think love isn't supposed to be that painful. You're learning to love yourself too, he said. And that also counts. I rested my head against his shoulder. The wind rustled a nearby tree, and for a moment, everything felt still. Not empty, but steady. Sometimes, when I replay the moment in that church back in Vermont, I see it differently. I thought I was simply walking out to marry the man I loved. But now I understand that I was also walking away from an old version of myself, a version who believed her worth could be measured in dollars, who believed love and financial rescue were the same thing. I don't know if my mother will ever see me as more than the daughter who made it and therefore owed something. I don't know if my sister will ever forgive me for not saving the house. I don't know if another storm of calls will come someday. But I do know this. I warned them. I told them clearly. They laughed at my promise like it was a joke. And when my phone lit up with 241 missed calls, I remembered every word. Don't ever expect another dollar from me again. I kept my promise to them and finally to myself. Now I live in a small stone house on Brookside Avenue with a man who shows up. On our living room bookshelf sits a large glass jar labeled Europe trip, pound and dollar only, mostly filled with spare change and a few crumpled bills. But every time I look at it, I feel a small spark of something I haven't felt in years. Hope one day I'll stand on an old cobblestone street in some European city I've only seen in pictures. Maybe Prague. Maybe Lisbon. Maybe somewhere I can't even imagine yet. I'll breathe the air, look at the sky, and remember the price I paid to reach that moment. And I will know, deep in my bones, that the peace I earned was worth every dollar I kept, every call I didn't answer, and every boundary I finally dared to draw.